Right, thanks for joining our first mental health and wellbeing podcast. We're joined today by somebody who's willing to share their story, their experiences, their challenges and their solutions, stemming back from childhood right to where they are now. And hopefully it can give you potentially some hope and some reassurance about where you are now and where you could be in the future. Maybe give you some advice and some tips about things you can do in the present, things you can do going forward to get you feeling better about yourself and understanding that you're not the only person who's potentially having these struggles and difficulties. Lots of people have been going through them. Lots of people are still going through them now, but people have found ways of dealing with them and progressing with their lives. So the first person we have on is Tom Garrett of Blue Minds Podcast. He's going to introduce himself and talk through how he sort of moved from childhood into sort of where he is now and the journey that he's taken. Welcome, Tom.
Yeah, mate. How you doing? You okay? Thanks for having me on first of all, mate.
Thanks for giving up your time.
That's brilliant, thank you. So I mean, I'll just sort of start from sort of secondary school really in year 7, and I think I just remember leaving year 6, and you think it's going to be this magical place when you go to secondary school, and you're growing up and it comes easy, but I think there's probably a lot of people hopefully listening to this who can relate to that and realise how hard it is when you go into year 7, and a lot of people have to make new friends, and it's a lot more adult-like. There's more work comes with it, a lot more pressures come with it. And I think for me, I wasn't the best behaved in my primary school years. I was really well behaved, and then I think I got into secondary school. Started hanging around with some lads who I probably got a little bit influenced under as well, which it's easily done. And I think the main reason for me struggling through secondary school was a lot of it was to do with fear of failure. And I mean that in terms of not just lessons, academic lessons and PE really. I mean, I was always good at football, but I always doubted myself. I remember I got asked to captain the school football team once, and I wouldn't do it because I knew there was a couple of players who was better than me. I remember it was in year 7 actually when the PE teacher, I don't know whether you still do it now, but they gave you a letter to go and have trials for the county, and I just wouldn't go. And my stepmom and dad at the time, they was trying their hardest really, and because I knew that I weren't going to start, I just thought, what's the point? I think that's hard really, and I can imagine that in the classroom and like I say outside in sport. If there's one thing that I could go back and tell myself now, it's to just do these things because you'd rather try, and people will always reward you for trying as well, but it's better to try than not to have tried and then be wondering what if for like the rest.
Well, we get that in the classroom a lot in terms of children who are afraid to put their hand up to fail because they don't want to be seen by their peers as somebody who's got the question wrong. But I think as you go through, certainly for myself, going through secondary school and college, university, that sort of stuff, you realise that the people who tend to go on and succeed are the people that have failed, and that they've realised, like, I've got this wrong, I've done this wrong, I've done this incorrectly, and then this is how I move forward. Whereas the people who are essentially worried about that failure, which is natural, it is scary to get something wrong. You do feel a bit stupid sometimes, you feel a little bit silly getting something wrong, but it's about sort of understanding that you get it wrong, you move on, and it's about maybe reviewing a failure and then moving on from it and forgetting it, because I think when you're at school, you think that everybody remembers it, and everybody remembers it forever. And they don't. 20 seconds later, everyone's forgot you didn't put your hand up. And it's about just getting used to that little bit of failure, trying it every now and again, put your hand up in a lesson and go, right, I want to try and answer this. If I get it wrong, so what? Move on. And just build on that step by step.
I suppose in a way, it's definitely just hearing you say that. And I think I used to dwell on a lot of things, just thinking about it really. And I think that's probably, the worst thing, you can do. If you do get something wrong, don't put yourself in a bad state of mind and punish yourself for doing it wrong, as you've just said. Just get back on the horse and try again, sort of thing. Because as you say, some of the most successful people in the world, really, I know, weren't very academic at school, but they've made themselves to where they are today.
No, 100%. You mentioned that when we spoke earlier, you mentioned that you sort of had essentially slightly strict parents, but then you got to school and it was almost like an outlet to sort of express yourself almost, and it's that ego we mentioned earlier in terms of it depends who your girlfriend is or what pair of trainers you've got on or what you're wearing, and we see that on non-uniform day as well. There's a lot of ego and look what cap I've got. My cap's worth 120 quid. And it's that, how cool do you look to your mates versus how cool do you look to your teacher sort of thing. And obviously it's natural to lean towards your mates, but it's that that one up in each other. And I think it's very, very common in boys, especially, is that ego thing. Well, my mate's done this, so I'm going to do this and beat him all. And that's behaviour, and it's classroom behaviour, and outside of school, it's football boots, that sort of stuff. But it's classroom behaviour in terms of, right, I'm going to put my hand up and give this really silly answer, and then somebody else thinks, oh, I can beat that, so they try it, and then they drag each other the wrong way rather than sort of dragging each other up. They drag each other down. Could you just go into a bit of detail about that in terms of how you got on at school in terms of behaviour, and what dragged you away from sort of academic stuff, and what you mentioned about your ego thing and isolations and detentions and that sort of stuff when you're at school? Could you go into a bit of detail about that?
Yeah. So just to recap, so I was in year 7. I spent 2 years at one school, and I wasn't very well behaved. Again, just genuinely being a class clown really. And I think my stepmom was a teacher anyway, so I think she, just wanted me to try a different school. And I had a lot of lads who played in the other school in my Sunday football team as well. So I think they thought it was going to work out a bit better. But I think that's where it all changed for me really. And I've said this to a lot of people. I remember I was in year 9 when I started my new school. And I think, at that age, especially lads, as you say, we start to, you get interested in girls and you want a girlfriend, that kind of thing. And I always remember my first day, and, there was all like girls saying, oh, where's he from? Who's this new lad? And it was like, I think from that day, really, I think I just kind of got carried away in that sort of, as you say, that ego thing. And, I was probably more worried about what girlfriend I had than, what lesson I was revising for. But it's, as you say, I mean, at such a young age like that, you've got no pressure on you anyway. You shouldn't even be, worried about that kind of thing. As you say, you sort of have girlfriends for 2 or 3 weeks anyway, and then like normally a month later there's a new one. But yeah, I think definitely in the classroom as well. It was kind of just I suppose being stupid really. Back chatting, answering back. Just getting myself sent out of lessons was like a game to me. Really, it was like, how long can I? What can I do that's stupid to get me sent out of this classroom within the first 5 minutes? And looking back on it, it's stupid really. And I suppose at the time, there was a lot of kids laughing.
Yeah.
Were them kids really laughing because they thought I was funny, or was they just thinking, what an absolute idiot? So I think again, it's just trying to, and I can understand it. I think for me, I had very strict parents, like you say. My stepmom and dad were very strict with me. I was always punished for having detention. If I had a detention letter sent home, or I was in isolation. And the one thing my dad always used to say was, it disappoints you when the school ring me, and that's when you knew you was in trouble. But I think that was kind of a reason why I did it even more to an extent. And I didn't realise at the time, but I went through when my mum and dad split up when I was younger. I had a lot of counselling and therapists and stuff like that, but I always ignored it, and I never thought that played a factor in it. And as you can imagine now, a lot of kids, now with stepmoms, stepdads, different parents, or different circumstances. I think it's just being honest, and talking to someone you have got at home, or whether you can confide in a teacher. Just talk about your feelings really, because as I said, there was a couple of teachers, who was at my school who really helped me, and even though they couldn't do nothing in terms of me playing up and just being in that mindset, I think just having a grown up conversation, sitting you down, talking to you, making you feel like an adult, and I think that's something people really respond to. But yeah, so I got into year 10 and 11 was pretty much a write off for me. Obviously, it's an very important time, and it's one thing, it's not that I regret it, but I wish I'd have tried a lot harder with school really. But again, I think I said to you yesterday, it was more embarrassment really. I didn't feel like I was that clever. As you just said, just in classrooms, if I would never put my hand up for an answer, because I always thought, if this is wrong, I'm going to look stupid. And I think a lot of my mates was in higher groups as well, in terms of like English and maths and science groups. I was always towards the bottom, probably because of my behaviour really. But I think I always felt a bit ashamed from that as well. But again, that was something that I could have easily sort of dealt with at that time really, by just, if I'd have had someone to talk to and just confide in. I think there's one thing you want to do, and you don't want to leave school and look back and think, I haven't tried, because as we all know now, your GCSEs go on to A levels go on to university, and that's where the top money is now. But on the other hand, I think I was always that kind of lad who I was never really interested in going to sort of college or anything. Even when we did study leave, so when we left in year 11, I never studied. I worked in a barber's, so I spent a lot of my days there, obviously because I was getting paid, and it's something my stepmom and dad weren't happy about really. But I think they could kind of see that I was that type of person who I wanted to be hands-on. I didn't want to be sort of sat in the classroom. And I think it was good though. I think it was really good for me to. I think I was in year 10 when I got my it was sort of a Saturday job, and I think that was probably one of the best things I ever did, in terms of bringing me out my shell, getting me to talk to people who were probably a lot older than me as well at the time. I mean, I was only sort of sweeping up the shop floor and making coffees and teas, but just joining in with the banter and stuff. I felt like it was a place where I belong, sort of thing. I could really see myself going into that career. So yeah, I just sort of left school and I went to college, obviously, to get my qualification in barbering, but just carried on with it really.
It's really interesting that you say, just going back just a little bit about having that conversation with someone. And personally myself, I know when I was at school that I always found it awkward talking to my parents about something, because it's almost like you're letting them in on something that's yourself. You don't want to share everything with your parents because you want to be independent in a way. But I think it's important that, especially children at school now, I think they see us teachers as somebody who is a teacher and that's it. Nothing going on outside of life, nothing going on before school or after school. They don't see us as people, and they don't think they can have that sort of conversation with us without realizing that we are an unbiased opinion. You can have a conversation with us. They can say, I'm struggling with this and that. My friend's done this, my mum's done that, and I'm anxious or I'm nervous or I'm scared about something. And I think, it's fine. Some kids will speak to their parents and they'll speak to their siblings or grandparents or whoever, but they don't really see teachers as an outlet. They can share stuff with you, and they should know it's confidential and it goes no further unless it needs to. And it'd be really interesting to see what sort of feedback we have on this in terms of when we send this out to the children and the kids in the school, how they feel about talking to teachers, and would they do that in the future, and would this sort of help them understand that there is a time and a place to speak to someone, and it could be anyone they trust. And going on from that, you say about finding somewhere that you belong. So, school's not for everyone. I don't think any teacher would try and lie and say that school's for everyone, and say that, right, you have to be academic and that's the be all and end all. And if you're not, then you're naughty or you're bad. And that's not the case. And you say about going to a barber's and you're around people that understood you, and then you found where you wanted to be. And obviously, it's quite ironic we're talking about barbering when I've got a mop of hair on top that is desperate for a trim, and yours all looks really styled, and mine looks an absolute mess. But you say about being a barber is, we were saying earlier, it's almost like a therapist, and you get to talk to so many different people from different walks of life. And then you realise that everyone's got an issue, and not everyone's issue is the same, not everyone's problem's the same, and everyone's got different hurdles. They could be a tiny hurdle that in a day's time they're over it, or it could be a huge hurdle that potentially they never get over, but they work towards trying to get over it. They work towards managing it and not falling over that hurdle, and they always try and stay on their feet. And we spoke yesterday, a couple of messages in terms of you finding triggers which sort of lead to sort of the mental health issues. And I think I was talking to a member of staff earlier, and we were saying that it's the best way of dealing with it is potentially not dealing with the mental health problem itself, but it's finding the triggers to start with. And we're cutting it out at the stem, and we're cutting it out at the cause, and we're preventing it from developing. And yes, finding a solution to a mental health problem is very good, but if we can prevent it starting, that's obviously the first step we need to take. Could you go into a bit of detail? Because I know you said you spoke yourself to somebody, or some counselling or a therapist or somebody that helped you. Could you go into a bit of detail on that?
Just first of all, I just wanted to say, and I think it's very important really to say this. I think, when I left school and I set up sort of a place of belonging, and I think then at that time, sort of 16, I had this image in my head where everything was going to be perfect again. I suppose, you always think that, probably before you started school as well, you think it's going to be this wonderful, magical place or whatever. And, I think if there's one thing I definitely want to get out to people, I think that the next, after sort of leaving school and working there, I then went in, I was very anxious for 2 years of I just felt like I'd never be able to cut hair as good as the people that I was working with. So then it was like, that was the next thing. And I think by the time I was about 21, I got, just getting caught up in being a young lad, really, probably some people who was a bit of a bad influence, and, just which obviously doesn't help the mental health, in terms of going out drinking every weekend and that, it's not all it's cracked up to be in terms of mental health when you get older anyway. And I think, I just got caught up in a place when I was about 21, 22, where a lot of people, were saying, oh, you should open your own shop. And again, that was another thing, is in failure. I just thought, I can't have my own shop. I can't do this, I can't do that. So just to push on a little further, I did go to the GP. I think it was around about 21, 22. And, I just said, the way I was feeling. And I remember at the time, I come away from there thinking, I don't know what to do. I was offered, I'll be honest, I was offered some like medication for it. And I remember at that age, I was thinking, I don't want to do this. I don't want people to, think there's something wrong with me or anything like that. And I'll be honest, my own downfall, I put that off then for another couple of years. And it wasn't until actually my partner and we went through a bit of bad news where she lost a baby. And that really did send me sort of on a downward spiral. And I think it was probably about 6 or 7 months after that, I remember, going, meeting up with my dad, and, I just sort of broke down, and I said to him, it's something that I wish I could have come to him when I was sort of 17 and 18 and said to him, because I think, the key is the earlier you can talk to someone, as you've just said, whether that's talking to a parent or a teacher, it does sound really cliche, but, it takes such a weight off your shoulders. And I remember people used to say, just talk about it. And you're like, no, it's not going to do anything, but it really does. And, even going to the podcast I do now, it's, just, I still get, anxiety about doing them. But when you've achieved something and you've done something, there's nothing more rewarding for self-confidence and that kind of thing. But yeah, so, sorry, I went off a bit tangent there. But yeah, when I did go to eventually get some help when I was about 23, it was, again, I think it was a case of, they can help you, people can help you in terms of giving you, sort of websites and support groups and stuff like that, whether it be medication or a plan. But I think, a lot of it you can sit in that doctor's room and take it in, but then sometimes I think you come home and you kind of think, oh, well, how do I go about this now? And I think for me, triggers is in, I suppose I didn't realise, I don't know if this applies to young people now, but I didn't realise, I used to drink a lot of coffee all day, every day. And that is one thing that, I've only realised in the last few years that causes anxiety, stuff like that. And I just think a big thing for me has been sort of, mindfulness. Again, I don't know if you've heard much about it, but when I first tried it, I felt stupid. I was sitting there with my pods in and, there's a woman talking in your ear saying, breathe in, breathe out. But I honestly do, me and my partner, we try and do it before bed now, because it really does get your head out. If you're thinking about, a really anxious feeling or down or whatever, just concentrating on your breathing, it makes your mind feel really relaxed.
That's really interesting. Three things I wanted to pick up on. That first thing in terms of anxiety about watching somebody else cut somebody else's hair and thinking, I'm never going to be that good. I think I think children will suffer with that. My friend's better than me at this. My friend's better than that. I think everyone suffers with that. I know I've been teaching for 2 years or a year and a half, and I've come into a profession where I see some teachers teach, and I think I'm never going to be that good. They're amazing. The classroom control's amazing. The way they make things understandable for everyone is really good. And I always look up to it and think, am I ever going to get there? And I understand where you're coming from that point. And I think a lot of our students will feel the same way as well, in terms of my friends doing this and that. Why aren't I doing that? And why can't I do that? And will I ever be able to do it? Another thing you mentioned as well is being able to go to your dad and wish you could have done that earlier on. And it's a very, very different situation. But I know when I was about 16, 17, and my granddad passed away, and I was really, really close with him. And I think from when it happened to the funeral, I didn't cry, I didn't talk about it. I almost sort of went cold to it and just thought, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to deal with it and all this sort of stuff. And went on for ages. I could feel myself just over a week or 2 weeks getting sadder and sadder and cutting off friends and that sort of stuff. And then after the funeral, managed to get through it. Didn't cry. I was like, I'm doing really well here. And it's like walking away on my own for a minute. I just couldn't. I just broke down. Couldn't stop crying for an afternoon's worth. And then after that, after I spoke to parents, and obviously they were really concerned, I felt so much better that I just had that conversation. I had a bit of a cry and got a bit upset, and then got it out of the system and shared it with people around me, and it felt so much better. And I just thought, God, if I'd have just done this the day it happened or the day after, and in that time, and just had a chat to somebody and let the emotions out and like a weight off your shoulders, and you almost feel like a new person, a bit more refreshed, and got more of a positive outlook. And I know you say about cliches earlier, but a cliche like a problem shared is a problem halved. Like you've taken that off you, and I think that's really important for people to know. Sharing it, it's not just the fact that you're telling someone; you're taking that burden off yourself a little bit, and people know around you how to deal with you, and that's something I want to touch on in a minute. And people around you, how to listen, how to talk to people, would be really interesting to talk about, because I think having the courage to talk to somebody is massive anyway. Being know how to express your feelings and when to do it, and I think that's an important thing. It's not maybe doing it in a lesson or at break time when you've got 15 minutes, but doing it after school when you've got a bit of time to discuss it properly, so you can actually express yourself properly. And then the other side of it, and it's something that I think I'd struggle with in terms of how to listen to someone. And I know people have spoken to me before, and I've always made a huge error in terms of how can I word it? I've made assumptions. Not everything's going to be all right though. And it's all right me saying it, but unless you believe it, it's not going to have any benefit. And potentially maybe going, oh, I know how you feel. Well, I didn't really. I have no idea how you feel. You're saying about that big issue in the loss of your child, and in terms of, it's all right, I could say to you, oh, I'm really sorry, I know you must be really upset. No, I don't. I have no idea. And then you listen to me, we're thinking, you haven't got any idea, mate. You've got no idea what I've been through and what's been happening. And it's learning how to listen, how to talk, and how to approach that in the correct way, I think. How did you feel when you went to the doctor? You said that you felt a little bit silly to start with, maybe explaining yourself and that sort of thing. And then I think once you get into a rhythm, and we said at the start of this podcast, I felt a little bit silly introducing it for the first time, and you said in a couple of minutes it'll be fine, and it does feel fine now. It feels far more comfortable than it did right at the start. So how did you become comfortable talking? How did you like sharing your feelings and that sort of thing?
I suppose, I think after that happened, I sort of said after going to my dad and speaking to him, and then, getting real proper help, really, I suppose, it was in probably over the next year or so. And then I think for me, it was, I can't really remember when it was really. Obviously, I've done this for so long now, and, I have a lot of conversations, as you say, with blokes, women of all ages, really, from primary school up to, pensioners. And I think it started, I'll be honest, I think I just, I was cutting sort of pensioners' hair, and I got this feeling in me where I thought, I suppose it's a bit of empathy for other people, really. You kind of see people struggling getting in the chair, and I think that was it for me. I started, just asking people, just how are you doing? Are you okay? And that kind of thing. Especially with, elderly people, it's probably for a lot of them, it's probably their only point of contact unless they go, shopping or something like that. But yeah, I think one day it just sort of clicked, and I always remember coming home. It was probably about 18 months ago, and there was a guy that I cut his hair, and I remember he lost his wife to cancer, and honestly, it ruined me. I remember coming home, and I was really upset about it, and I don't even know the bloke really. I'd only cut his hair a couple of times, but I think I remember saying to my other half then, those are the people you remember in the day, with no disrespect, if someone comes in and says, oh, you watched the football last night, you watched the whatever. Obviously you're talking about that all day anyway, so you don't really remember. But I remember, I think that was when it clicked to me, and I thought, the role that what I'm in, I can actually help people here, and be their sort of first point of contact if they need it. And I think ever since then, really, I'm 27 now, so it's probably been about nearly 4 years. And I think having that life, with what happened to me and my partner as well, I definitely think that put things into perspective for me as well. Just to kind of be kind, because you genuinely don't know what other people are going through. But yeah, I just even now that's one thing I'm looking forward to getting back to now, because I know there's going to be a lot of people who just probably need a chat with someone. But just going to sort of secondary school age, I've got a lot of young lads customers that age, And I love seeing the first time you cut their hair, obviously because they're all nervous because they want the perfect haircut. So they want to know you can do a good job. But once they've known I can do that, I love it. You know, I have groups of like 5 or 6 lads who are all in the same year come in, and you know, it's just I can see the confidence building in them all as well. You know, from like the first time I spoke to him, and even sometimes you do get younger lads who come in and who probably are a bit anxious and stuff. You know, I remember going to the barbers when I was younger. It was a very scary environment sometimes. But I think if there's one thing I can say, as you just said as well, I think there, if there's any lads listening to this, next time you go for your haircut, just even if you start the conversation, say, "Oh, you've been busy today, mate," or they'll happily speak to you. And I think that will give you confidence in terms of talking to people. And I think after you come away from something like that, like you just said, you will feel better for it. But yeah, I think mainly it'll give you the confidence knowing that you can speak to people, because I think that's another thing now. I think the sort of the changing generation. I've said it on one of my pods the other day. The pressure now on younger people that age, as you said, to have the right haircut or the right shoes, and I think obviously things are a lot more expensive as well. Now, when I used to be, it just used to be like a pair of black trainers for us. But no, I think it's you've just got to open, as you said, you've got to open up and just don't let things kind of eat away at you, really.
No, I think you've absolutely nailed that. That's a big thing. You talk about haircuts, and it's a huge thing in school, but you've got that opportunity there to talk to somebody you don't know. You've got that opportunity to talk to somebody and build those sort of social skills and express yourself a little bit, because you're on the other side of it. You cut in the hair. You want to talk to somebody. You want to talk to people, and you've obviously got those skills to talk to somebody and potentially even prize out a little bit of their mental health and talk to them about that sort of thing. But I think everybody's got that.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, because that's I meant to say that, just that's the point where I've got to now. I think for years when I was younger, I was always, I want to do the best haircut. I weren't bothered about talking to people. And then I think I've got to an age now where I just think, I couldn't really. It sounds horrible, really, but the haircut doesn't bother me now. It's the how have I made that person feel? As long as he can walk out the shop, and as long as he can say to his wife or whoever, his mum or dad, "Oh, that lad down the barbers, he's a really nice lad." And I think if you can make people have that assumption of you, and and you've done everything you can do to be nice to someone else, I think that's just the key, isn't it, really?
Oh, massively. And there was that whole hashtag that was going around. It's a shame it didn't really seem to last that long, and everyone's sort of come out of that sort of mindset now. But it was a hashtag "Be Kind," because you don't really know what's going on. And I think obviously, if you're a child, you're going to have fun. You should have fun every day, but you're going to be talking to people, and you've got no idea what your friend's putting up with. You don't know what is going on in his life. If he shared it with you, or if she shared it with you.
Sorry, there's one example. Sorry, Matt. There's just one example I want to give. I always remember this because he was involved in our football team, but he couldn't play because I think he had to have some hip operation, so he used to have walking sticks and stuff in school. And this is a prime example for me now. When I was year 10, there would be people, I honestly wasn't one of the ones, but there was people who would laugh at him, snigger at him, walking past, kind of take the mick a little bit. And I look back now and I think, if there's one thing I wish I'd have done, and I wish I'd have had this mindset now to go over to him, because he was always on his own, and just say, "Oh, how are you doing, mate? You all right? Are you coping? Do you want me to give you a hand with your bag?" And it's like you say, just little things like that now, they go a long, long way, and people remember that as well.
Oh, I'm really glad you've given an example of that. It's massive. I had a best friend at school, and I thought I knew everything about him. And unfortunately, he passed away not so long ago. And at his funeral, they'd spoken about things he'd done for his neighbours. And he'd go shopping for them. He'd take the bins out and he'd wash the cars. And I had no idea he was doing this. So you've got no idea, and that was a good thing. That's nothing that's going to sort of affect his mental health, but he's helping other people. I had no idea he was doing it. And I wish I did, because they might have inspired me to go, "Oh, that old lady lives down the road. I'll go and do her shopping for her." And then if I've done it, my mate might go and do it. And then everyone's much nicer to each other. And it's almost like a pack mentality in school, that if somebody does it who's potentially above you in that social pecking order, you think, well, if he's doing it, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to join in with him. And then somebody else will join in with you. And then all of a sudden, you've got 5, 6, 7, 8 people taking a account of one person who doesn't deserve it, and if they've done nothing wrong. And it's like a pack mentality. And if it, like you say, that one person.
That's the thing, isn't it, as well? And I mean, I can remember a lot of other kids, in lower years, different years as well, who I don't think you ever think about that, you know, when you're in school. But I always, you know, think about how he feels at the end of the day after that. You know, he's going to go home. He's going to be probably have anxiety, depression, you know, you name it really, because you're not going to want to come to school, are you, if that's, you know, sort of you every day. And I think, you know, that's the important thing, really. I mean, I'm not sure whether it's, you know, still bullying is probably a little bit different now. I suppose it's more, as you said yesterday, it's more on these now, isn't it? You know, your mobile phones and that now. But even then, you know, I mean, just rather than, you know, I mean, there's a lot of toxic things, isn't there, on the internet, as we all know. And I think, again, it's just finding the positives out of that, really. I mean, you know, rather than looking at something you don't really need to be looking at, you know, look at something that's a bit more positive for you, you know, whether that's a YouTube video on mindfulness, or, you know, being kind or something, or, you know, even just explaining symptoms and things of, you know, different mental illnesses, because like you say, then kids then might be able to see someone else in that classroom and think, yeah, oh yeah, I've seen that on YouTube, or, you know, he's got anxiety, ADHD, whatever it is.
Yeah, well, definitely. And then you say that you learn something new, and you maybe identify it with one of your peers or somebody. And we talk about that pack mentality. Maybe you being that person that instigates that conversation with them. Maybe your friend then sees you doing it and thinks, well, I'm going to do that because I think somebody else has got a problem.
Yeah,
And maybe
yeah,
the pack mentality, traditionally it works negatively, but could it work positively? And could we get people to, one person's kind is two people going to be kind, three people, four people, and
yeah,
that sort of thing, and try and build a pack mentality the right way to push
yeah,
each other up rather than drag each other down. It's really easy to drag someone down.
yeah,
It's really the easiest thing in the world. It's a lazy, horrible, nasty thing to do, but it's really easy because everyone's conscious. Everyone's got that self-consciousness about them.
yeah,
You pick something different in someone and think, well, they're different to me, so that's an easy target. Not they're different to me. I'm going to find out why, and I want to
yeah,
find out and educate myself about why they're different. That's really interesting in terms of you're talking about. I think we've covered quite a lot. Really interesting topics there. Another thing I wanted to talk on was in terms of routine. As a routine helps you at all? Did you ever benefit from a routine? You say about going to bed and doing those mindfulness videos, just having that thing you know you're waiting for at the end of the day, and it's going to
yeah,
calm you down and relieve your anxiety. And I think at the moment with lockdown, children have had no routine,
yeah,
and they've allowed their, and a bored mind is actually really, really creative because it's trying to come up with its own things. And that's when I think you start to worry about something that if you were busy, it wouldn't have affected you. But because you've got a bored mind, you're starting to think, what am so and so's thinking this or saying this or doing this? And you drag yourself into a spiral of anxiety about going back to school, or depression, or self-consciousness. You start to sort of go into your shell a little bit and worry about things that
yeah,
in normal times maybe would never have affected you. You'd never have thought about it, because you've
yeah,
got this time to think with your own thoughts. You start to worry about things that would never usually affect you. And you say about that routine with mindfulness, you've got something to look forward to at the end of the day in terms of, all right, it's going to relax me. I'm going to reset myself and look forward to the next day. Could you talk about those podcasts? Do you find that those sort of mindfulness things really, really helpful, or is anything else you've ever used that our kids could use potentially?
I mean, I suppose for me, I think it's it's setting yourself a routine. I'll use the last lockdown as an example. The first lockdown in well, obviously a year ago now, I really struggled with it. And I think there was one thing I never, you know, I've always been one of them. And I was like it when I was younger. I didn't want to go to school. I don't want to get up in the morning, go to work. But I think, like you say, after having that sort of time to reflect, and, you know, you can get yourself into a bad state of mind. I remember when we went back in September, I was so anxious to go back to work. And I think that's something a lot of kids will relate to now, going back to school. And I think for the reason, probably similar reasons, obviously not cutting hair, but I was thinking, bloody hell, there's going to be 20, 30 people outside the shop waiting, you know, it's going to be really busy. I'm going to be back to back. I'm going to have my phone's going to be going, are you open? Are you busy? And I think you know, I was doubting myself after being off for 3 months. I was thinking, you know, am I going to be able to go back and cut hair? I haven't done it for 3 months. Yeah, as I can imagine, you know, I can imagine with a lot of kids now thinking the same thing. You know, they haven't been around kids in a classroom probably for so long, and you know, I guess that although everyone wants lockdown to end, I guess that's the other thing. You know, there's going to be a lot of people, and I think I'll be like it to an extent. You know, I'll be a little bit. I don't want to, you know, sort of be crowded, and I suppose I do worry about that really. But in terms of, you know, coping and stuff like that, I think for one, I think I know a lot of, I don't know if a lot of young people do this now, but I think just going for biggest thing for me is exercising. and I don't do it enough. I think if I did it more, I'd probably be a lot happier. But just sometimes I wake up in the morning and I don't even think about it. I get out of bed and I just go for a run. And I know that's hard. Obviously, so depends on your age and stuff. You can't just leave the house. But even if it's, I know you probably heard of it, like Joe Wicks. Doing that. I was doing that in the last lockdown, and I felt a bit stupid at first because I'll be honest, I thought it was more for like women and children, young children. But I was doing that with my other half, and we was having a laugh doing it as well. And I can't stress enough how you will never ever feel bad after doing some sort of exercise. At the time you think, oh, I don't really want to do it, but if you can, like I say, just do a little workout on YouTube or just come up with something yourself, I think that helps massively. Doing that on the morning, that can really set your mind for the day, especially like when work's normally open. I tend to go to the gym I don't even do a lot, to be honest, but I tend to go for about half an hour in the morning just to give me that focus, and then I know I'm not going to be thinking about all the negative things then when I go to work, so I feel a lot more. Definitely the mindfulness. I know there's an app called Calm. Probably a lot of people are familiar with that now. I think they do charge, but you do get freebies on there. And I think there's a lot of exercises on there where there's one called I think it's 7 days of anxiety, and each day will sort of take you through a different technique of how you can combat that. As I said before, the biggest one, the first one, the easiest one, if you like, is just sort of breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, and then it's sort of just focusing on nothing really, and if your mind does wander, bringing it back to your breath, or how relaxed you are. But yeah, I just think for me the two key things are probably mindfulness and exercise. And I think the other thing is, and I was very guilty of this when I was younger, I suppose it's a bit harder now in lockdown, but when you get back from school and your mum and dad ask you how your day has been, don't just say, oh yeah, it's all right. Be honest. If you've had a rubbish day, tell them how you feel, or tell them what's on your mind.
Yeah, and alternatively, if you've had a good day, share it.
Yeah.
Like, I used to get home from school having a good day, and I used to think it's just easier to say, yeah, it's fine. And then go up and go and do something else, go out with the mates, go and play PlayStation. It's just something else. It's easier. But I don't think you realise when you're that age that parents really do care. They want to know how you've got on with your day. They're not just saying it for the point of saying it. They want to find out. And you mentioned a minute ago that physical exercise, in terms of, it's not just the physical benefits. You say you had a laugh when you were doing it. So you've got those social health benefits and those mental health benefits, and that's what exercise should be. It's not about, right, let's do this exercise because I want to have six-pack abs and huge shoulders and huge arms. Right, it's just a byproduct of it. But have a bit of fun, have a laugh. I worked at a gym before I was teaching, and it was Friday afternoon, sort of 5 o'clock. I worked with a Land Rover, and it was almost like a social club. People coming in having a chat. How was you? Did you see what happened so and so at work? Did you see what happened? This happened, that happened, and they have that conversation in a gym. But then, if they weren't there, would they have that conversation anywhere else? Probably not. So exercise has so many benefits in that respect.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing. I think for me, I mean, you can see the size of my arms. I've always been really wary. I think it was another thing I was always anxious about. Exercising, especially going into gyms. I used to think, because I'm quite skinny, I used to think, oh, people are going to look at me and think, oh, he's skinny, you don't know what he's doing. But again, that's all in your mind. People, if you go into them sort of environments, people, if you ask them or talk to them or ask for any help, they're more than happy to help. But I mean, that's why I normally, I do tend to exercise on my own, just because I prefer it really. But I think, like I said, it just gives you something to focus your mind on, especially exercising, on the morning. And as you say, you're having, if you can have a laugh while you're doing it as well, whether that's, just meeting up with a friend and going for a 10-minute run, it's just something, it will definitely make you feel a lot better.
Massively. Right then, I think we'll tie it up in a moment. Do you have any resources that you'd like to share? Any websites that you think could be really useful for some of our students to visit? You've mentioned Calm as the app. Any websites that you find particularly?
I think Young Minds. I know there's obviously a lot of people would have heard of Mind Charity, but there's one for sort of, I think it's 24 and under. I think Young Minds. They've got a lot of resources online, on loads of different sort of mental illnesses, conditions, anything really. So you can find a lot out on there. The other one I wanted to give a shout out to was there's a group I spoke to. They only started up, but it's called the Ripple Suicide Prevention. And I know, we know that suicides, are really, really high at the minute in this country of all ages. I'm guessing really, and that I think it was the girl's brother who committed suicide. All it is now, it's just I suppose to be wary about what you're looking at online, really. And that, I know they've got. I think they did a meeting with Google. It was who want to try and implement this idea. So if you're searching something on Google, it'll come up with a sort of a red flag, and say put you in touch with a support group or whatever. So that's another thing I would check out as well, because I think that really can. That really, and how you can get sort of brainwashed by the internet. I know many people who, especially with all the conspiracy theories and stuff nowadays, who can go off that. But definitely, I'd say Young Minds, Mind Charity, and Papyrus as well, and that's Papyrus.
Lovely. I'll put those links in the chat box at the bottom. I really appreciate you being so open and honest and sharing your story. And I want to sort of direct anyone listening as well to the Blue Minds podcast. What is your Twitter handle so they can go and access that? And
just give me 1 sec, mate. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
I always forget what it is. I think
that's okay.
Yeah, it's just at Blue Minds Pod on Twitter. The same for Instagram as well. And our YouTube channel with the Blue Minds, it's under Blues Focus TV, so you can find all the Blue Minds pods on that YouTube channel.
Amazing. That's been brilliant. I've enjoyed that. Really good. I'll stop the recording, but that's been